Please join me in welcoming to Racine County Governor Scott Walker.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is an honor to be with you here today. I was just got in a couple minutes earlier, was seeing my good friend Bill McReynolds. I bumped into my former colleague and then was with Jim Ladwig, your new county executive, talking a little bit of business for here. I see Gene here as well. So I got the whole litany of former county executives. It's good to be with you down here in Racine County. And as you mentioned in the end of the introduction, it's interesting. It was about 7 months ago. Sometimes it seems about 7 years ago, but I was elected to office. And I remember that night, November 2nd. It was not an easy night to forget. It was my birthday, of all things. But that particular night, I was at a podium like this, and my staff had asked me, what do you want to put on the front? I said, do you want to put your name? Do you want to put your slogan? Do you want to put a brown bag? What do you want up there? And I said, well, it's real simple. It's not about me. It's from this point forward, it's about the state and the direction we're going to head it. So I had to make up a sign that looks a little bit like this bumper sticker, and I said, let's put up Wisconsin is open for business. We not only put out stickers like this, we put up signs and billboards, and more importantly, though, we talked about not just a symbolic change from that point forward, but starting on January 3rd, we wanted to make it very clear that it was more than just a stylistic change in this state, but that there had been a significant substantive change in the direction that we were taking the state of Wisconsin. And so on that, the 3rd of January, after I took the oath of office, we went out and literally walked back to the office where there's a big conference room, and I grabbed the new Speaker of the Assembly and grabbed the new Senate Majority Leader, and each gave them a letter that called them into special session, they and the other lawmakers into a special session specifically on jobs. And the sole purpose was, I believe we need to act on it right away. In fact, it was interesting, about a month later, I was in my office early in February, and I was talking to a reporter from the Associated Press who was doing a story that was going to run across the nation. And he said, you know, why is it that you acted so quickly? I mean, think about it. We passed tort reform within the first month, some of the most aggressive tort reform in the country. We pulled back on the estate tax and health savings accounts, which is good for not only small businesses, sole proprietorships, family farmers, workers in general. We changed the tax code so that we lowered the tax code when it comes to job creators. We passed, we put forward of late major regulatory reform to help you cut through the red tape when it comes to the regulations. We took the Department of Commerce, which for years was not only about promoting commerce, it's also been in part about regulating commerce, and said the regulations either should go away or go to another state agency, and instead we put that and transformed that into a new Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation that's sole purpose is to promote commerce in the state of Wisconsin, which we'll talk about in a moment. We did all those things in the first 30 to 40 days or so in office, and this guy said, the reporter said to me, well, you know, why did you guys move so fast? Most governors haven't even found, you know, where their office is. Most lawmakers can't even tell you where the bathroom in the Capitol is. And you guys have passed the most aggressive pro-jobs agenda in the country. Why is it? And I said, well, it's real simple. You see, when I was out in a job interview to be the CEO of your state government, over the 18 months leading up to that election, I told people there was both an economic and a fiscal crisis in the state. And then I said what I thought we needed to do to turn that around. In my sense is, and for all of you who run your own companies or actively engaged in managing your own companies, you know that if you've got to turn a company around, you don't wait a year or 6 months or even a month. You start acting on that the very first day. And so that's exactly what we did. Now think about it. The great part about that is because of that, we've shown that when we say Wisconsin's open for business, that's not just a slogan. We're actually getting some traction. Since January of this year, we've seen through last week, in the first 4 months of the year, we have already seen the creation in the private sector of 25,000 new jobs. 11,500 of those jobs are in manufacturing. How about that for results? Now, that's been taking notice around the country as well. Not only have the job numbers peaked up, and I was convinced, and I think when you contrast that with what other states are doing around the country, you look no further than just to the south over the state line. I mean, earlier this year, the governor and the legislature in Springfield decided the way they were going to tempt the balance of their budget in Illinois was to raise taxes on individuals by 67% and on businesses by nearly 50%. At the time, I went down to Rockford and Springfield. I didn't do Springfield, but I went to Rockford and I went to Chicago, talked to people in Springfield and the Quad Cities and elsewhere, and I said, you know, this is a recipe for disaster. You're going to drive people and jobs out of the state. And I predicted it would happen in a year and not just in 2 years, because not only did they not account for the fact that people don't like to have higher taxes, let alone taxes that high all at one time, but they really didn't tackle their challenges. So one of the things I pointed out is that in Illinois, they have a pension system that is only half funded. Ours is 100% funded. We have our share of challenges, but they have a system that's absolutely a mess. They raise taxes on business, raise taxes on individuals. Lo and behold, that we know that it wouldn't be just a year later. It would be just a couple months later. Last week, they announced they have an $8 billion budget deficit, and the treasurer of the state of Illinois yesterday put out a letter saying he would tell the bond rating agencies not to lend money to the state of Illinois to make up for their $8 billion deficit. In contrast, we're moving things in the right direction, and it is taking note. 2 weeks ago, this past Friday, Chief Executive Magazine did their annual story about a CEO survey they do of CEOs across the country. Now, normally we don't talk about that ranking much in Wisconsin because they rank from 1 to 50, and we're usually somewhere between 40 and 50 on that ranking. Last year, we were 41. 2 weeks ago, Friday, we went from 41 to 24, 17 states above where we were a year ago, the fastest increase of any state in the country this year in the survey. And to my knowledge, after checking with their editor, the fastest increase of any state in one single year in the history of the CEO survey. People are taking note of what we're doing here in Wisconsin. Now that's important. That was 2 weeks ago, a week ago Monday. If you read the Monday Wall Street Journal, it talked about what we're doing. It talked about how it's having an impact. It talked about the irony of all the attention back in February and March. And if anything, what that said to job creators around the country is when we make a promise in this state, unlike politicians in other states, we deliver on it no matter what pressure, no matter what intensity. If we tell you we're open for business and we're going to do what it takes to help job creators create more jobs in this state, we're going to follow through on that promise. The irony is that probably helped us more than anything draw attention to Wisconsin as being a place that's headed in the right direction. In that same editorial, it contrasts that again. I didn't even have to make the point they did down there. It made the contrast with Illinois and pointed out that in the last 5 years in that survey, Illinois has dropped 40 spots. 40 state drop in 5 years. We're heading in the right direction. 17 spots up in 1 year. They're headed down 40 in the last 5 years. We're heading in the right direction. That's why not only do we want to help businesses, and first and foremost, help businesses in the state grow and expand, I think there is a unique opportunity in Racine County, in Kenosha County, and Rock County to tell particularly mid-sized and small-sized businesses in the state of Illinois that are looking to expand that we've got a place for them to do business, and it's right here in the state of Wisconsin. With your help, we're going to add even more jobs from the land of Lincoln up to this state and expand and help the ones growing here in the first place. That's where the excitement is for the future. So right off the bat, we've shown first and foremost that we're going to create a better business environment, that we're going to make it easier. We're not going to look to do what Illinois is doing, which is spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to just beg companies like Caterpillar and Sears just to stay. Instead, we want to spend our time and our focus and our energy taking businesses that are here and telling you why it's good to expand here and to grow here and to build here and to attract others to the great state of Wisconsin. Now, in addition to that, one of the other things I think that's important about getting the state working again is not just creating a better business climate, but also getting our finances in order. When I talk about getting our finances in order, I'm not just talking about a short-term fix. You see, one of the problems we've inherited in the past, one of the reasons why we faced a $3.6 billion budget deficit is past governors and past legislators have deferred the budgetary problems to the future. You know, 2 years ago, they had the largest structural deficit ever. And not only on top of that, but they really did that in part because they took federal stimulus aid, and instead of making the tough decisions then, they used that to provide momentary balance to their budget. A few years before that, they raided the transportation fund and the patient compensation fund. And today, all those bills are due. I mean, I think about what the government's done here and across the country, and it's a lot like, you know, back in the fall of 2008 when the market started to fall apart. It would be like if you or I or any of us here ran out and got a credit card, and we ran up a $300,000 or a $400,000 or $500,000 bill, and then we handed it off to our kids and said, you pay the bill. Think about that. But that's essentially what's happened. That's what our government's doing. It is time to cut up the credit card bill. It is time to pay the bills. It is time to move forward with a way that is sustainable for the future. In our budget, we not only balance a $3.6 billion deficit without raising taxes, we actually freeze property taxes for the next 2 years. We don't raise any other taxes or fees to do that across the board. And along the way, we actually virtually eliminate the structural deficit from the highest ever to essentially wiping it out. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I went to New York City and I talked to the national bond rating agencies. In a time when other states and other jurisdictions are seeing their bond rating dropped, ours was actually stabilized. And one of the things I was the most proud about is Moody's, one of those national bond rating agencies, pointed out in print, in writing, that our budget, our biannual budget for the next 2 years, is actually a credit positive budget. When was the last time you heard about that in government?